Good afternoon, everyone. I am Rachel Savasic-Luxton. I'm the Director of Research and Training here at the Dibble Institute, and I'm thrilled to welcome you all to today's webinar, Love Notes and Life Lessons, Building Resilience Among Youth Where It's Needed Most. We're honored and thrilled to have Dr. Ezra Shaheen here to present her research and findings with us, and I'll introduce her in just a couple of moments, but before I do, I just want to go through some housekeeping items. The first one is the standard check your audio settings. If you're having issues hearing the presentation, you can find those in the control panel. If you're still having some difficulties getting those worked out, we encourage you to find the number in your invitation and dial in for the audio. We are excited that you are joining us here, so we'd love to hear from y'all. The chat is currently open. If you want to take a moment to locate the chat in your control panel in Zoom, tell us who you are and where you're joining us from today. We'll give you some time because we will be closing and opening the chat throughout the presentation. So if you have questions for us, for Dr. Shaheen, please go ahead and put those in the Q&A box. Again, all questions need to go in that Q&A box so that they don't get lost when we do have the chat opened throughout the presentation. We want to make sure that we're able to address them because we will have time at the end of the webinar. And so making sure that they're in the Q&A will help to ensure that we can do that and that they get addressed before the session is over. Also, this helps us from, or helps keep everyone from losing track of the handouts that we'll be sharing in today's presentation. Kim, who is working in the background for us, will share the handout in the chat for you today, just at the start of Dr. Shaheen's presentation, and again at the end of today's session. If for some reason you happen to miss it, it will be sent along with the recording for today, so don't worry too much about that. Lastly, closed captioning is available should you choose to use it. So we see some folks starting to write into the chat. Okay, now it's open. Sorry about that. We thought it was open. So go ahead and let us know who you are and where you're joining us from. And as you're doing that, I am going to do a brief introduction to the Dibble Institute and who we are and how we got our name. So we have to start with the wonderful founders that gave us that name, which are Charlie and Helen Dibble, and you can see them on the screen here. Charlie did a lot of work with youth during his retirement, and he saw that a lot of them were having difficulties around their relationships. And when they were having difficulties with their relationships, or when the youth's parents were having challenges with their relationships, it really impacted those young people that he was working with, kind of just beyond the relationship aspect. So he had the brilliant idea, being the Mr. Fix-It that he is, to translate research into teaching tools that could then be made widely available. So the Dibble Institute itself is not a direct service provider. Rather, we develop research-based practices and make them available for organizations and probably many of you who are joining us in today's session. So a little bit more about us. Since our wonderful founder created us decades ago, we are a national independent nonprofit organization. We have clients in all 50 states who are providing direct services, which is really exciting, and even beyond. And last year, based on our conservative estimates, we believe our clients reached almost 115,000 youth based on the materials that they purchased. So we just want to say how grateful we are to all of you who are here doing this important work with young people. So we just want to take a moment to thank you for all that you do. And I love seeing everybody coming in the chat. So keep that going. Welcome to some folks from Auburn, my original stomping grounds. Good to have y'all here as well as everybody else. So in addition to us being a national independent nonprofit organization, what guides the work that we do? One of the things that guides our work is our mission. And our mission is to empower youth and young adults with skills to build and sustain healthy interpersonal and romantic relationships. We know that by having these conversations with youth and young adults, that it pulls a lot of levers. So thinking pregnancy prevention, dating violence prevention, the mental health lever, job readiness, and so much more. So in addition to our mission guiding us, we're also guided by our values. And the first one is that we are big believers in research. All of our programs are research-based, and we continue to strive for evaluations on our programs to demonstrate their impact and their effectiveness. And with that, that means updates are made to our programs as we learn new information, and highlighting research done on our programs like we're doing today is something that we very much believe in the value and the importance of. Another core value is that we believe in safe, stable, and healthy, nurturing families of all different formations. And this is our goal for young people. And lastly, we believe that relationship education is for everyone. All of us can improve our relationships and we can make sure that our programs are reflective of that. I actually had a conversation today that someone was saying they were working with a wide range of individuals and found that this program was helpful in developing those skills, kind of regardless of where they were at their stage in life. So with that, I want to take a moment to introduce Dr. Ezra Shaheen. She currently works as a postdoc fellow at Utah State University while instructing psychology courses for Berkshire Community College. She's originally from Turkey and received her bachelor's and master's in psychology and her doctorate in human development and family studies from the University of Illinois. We found some crossover with our histories prior to starting the webinar today, which is very exciting. She comes from a background combining teaching and research for the past decade. She has extensive experience in adolescent well-being, cross-cultural psychology, and interpersonal relationships. And in her free time, she enjoys traveling the world with her husband, playing video games, and camping. So with that, I will take no more time from her, and I will turn it over to Dr. Ezra Shaheen.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Rachel, so much for the introduction. It's so nice to be here doing this presentation as part of this webinar and as part of the institute that does really good work for youth. And it was also wonderful to see that we have a lot of people from across the country. So let's get started. So I want to start before I talk a lot, which I usually don't like to do. I want to start with a question. So please write down in the chat. Think about your high school years. Think about those first-time romances. What are some things you think youth should know when it comes to romantic relationships, just in general? Yeah, I see people already typing it in. Boundaries, taking slow, red flags and green flags, brain chemicals. There are definitely some things that we do cover in the relationship education courses. Yep. Love versus lust, self-love, boundaries and communication. We need to be ourselves first. STIs, definitely. Boundaries, background of the person you're dating. Yeah, this is awesome, the answers we're getting, because what we're going to talk about definitely touches on a lot of those things. Taking it slow, brain chemicals, yep, communication and mental health, values, red flags. So in general, the common things that are mentioned are like red flags, boundaries, communication. So things that we need to, and STIs, like things that we kind of need to learn about. Some of these we do learn through experience, but a lot of these actually would really help if you'd had some guidance, right? So moving on, um, let's talk about romantic relationships among youth and what we know about them. So if we move forward in the slides, so it is important in terms of romantic relationships during like those young years, they are central in adolescents' lives. So high school students often say they spend more time with their romantic partners than their parents, siblings, or friends. And they play a big role in identity development and also in learning and understanding how a family works. And in addition, it contributes to the development of sexuality and plays a big role in career planning because you're thinking about potentially starting a family, and that makes you think about your future, etc. So, I have another question for everybody. What are some potential risks of romantic relationships among youth? I know some people mentioned red flags. But okay, like what are like actual risks that we need to be wary about? Violence, definitely. Damaged perception of self. Yes, that ties directly to identity development. Abuse and domestic violence, sexual violence, obsession, pregnancy. Yeah, teen pregnancy can be a big problem. Getting caught up who's not with someone who's not a good match. STDs, definitely. Drugs, mental and emotional violence, codependency, control. Mental health, definitely. Yeah, so again, even though young love is awesome, there are some things that we need to watch out for. So moving forward, youth do spend more time with their peers during adolescence when romantic and sexual relationships kind of begin to develop. And romantic relationship experiences during this time can help you develop conflict management and communication skills, be better at emotional expression, and have better romantic relationships in adulthood in the future. So it's kind of like practicing. But there are, of course, risks. Dating violence among adolescents can occur often, and it is related to really negative outcomes like drug use, which was mentioned, risky sexual behavior that can lead to STIs or teen pregnancy, depression and anxiety, and some people mention mental health. And dating violence is more likely among males, older youth, and those from families with lower educational attainment and substance use. And we have known this for a while, so we need to take this research a step further to understand other contextual dynamics that might pose risks for adolescent romantic interactions. So I have a third and final question for you. So when you think about potential benefits like promotive factors and risk factors, this kind of makes you think about, okay, some people have high risk, some people have support. So this brings us to the concept of resilience. So what does resilience mean to you? In one or two words, what does resilience mean when you think about it? Ability to overcome. Yes. So there is a challenge. And if you overcome it, then you're a resilient person. Ability to bounce back from hardships and grow instead of getting stuck. Exactly. Agency. You need to have agency to be resilient. And sometimes, again, with youth, you may need to learn that strength, rising above, a strong sense of self ties to identity development again, staying the course. So definitely. So researchers studying youth have sometimes adopted deficit models, and they would focus more on cataloging risks and emphasizing the problems. But others have criticized this deficit model and proposed a more strength-based approach, such as resilience. So resilience theory emphasizes the ability to maintain adaptive behavior or ability to maintain well-being following adversity, following some risks, which can depend on social context. Like depending on your background, you can have different risk factors. So the resilience framework focuses more on positive factors in youth development and enhancing strengths, which are called promotive factors. And this approach actually, rather than the deficit approach, helps us scaffold reasons why some youth may become healthy adults despite being exposed to a lot of risk factors, despite adversity. So, to summarize briefly, some of the main goals of relationship education among youth is to support informed decision making about dating, such as partner selection, helping youth understand what a healthy relationship is, how to maintain one, by teaching them skills related to relationship pacing, like take it slow, like some people said, and conflict management, which also involves communication. We also want youth to recognize risks because adolescent romantic relationships are not always roses and petals and positive experiences. And resilience has been used as a central concept in strength-based interventions that the DeBille Institute does offer and promote. And these strength-based interventions equip youth with promotive factors that protect against sexual risk-taking or other risks. So it's important to evaluate the effectiveness of these intervention programs, considering the background of youth, the background of the participants of the relationship program, especially as it relates to individual and environmental factors. So, love notes, knowing that unplanned pregnancy, single parenting, and troubled relationships are a serious threat to the well-being and the future of many young people and their children, Love Notes was created for vulnerable, high-risk audiences that are exposed to risk factors that will need to develop resilience to bounce back. So Love Notes is geared towards older teens and young adults that are coming from vulnerable, high-risk backgrounds. And it has been, from research we know, it has been demonstrated successful, especially with inner city and rural youth. So through Love Notes, 13 lessons, participants discover, often for the first time, how to make wise choices about partners, sex, relationships, pregnancy, like protecting themselves from pregnancy, and more. So we try to achieve these goals for youth in general, but what is more important and valuable is doing it for youth in most need who come from adversity. Therefore, the community of focus that we will talk about here is youth in urban counties along the Wasatch Front in Utah, who have high rates of some of those risks that we were just talking about, such as teen births, high rates of STIs, risk-taking, mental health issues, and sometimes poverty. These two tables from Utah Department of Health show how this specific community experiences more disparities compared to the rest of Utah and also to the rest of the country. Yeah. It shows like higher rates of STIs and teen pregnancy. So having this goal of understanding youth in need, we wanted to know if improvement in program outcomes and participant experiences differed based on educational background as well as other background demographics. So our first research question was, are there differences in pre and post program before and after attending a relationship education course in the outcomes of that we measure among youth from urban high schools, alternative education, and behavioral health facilities? We also considered the influence of background characteristics. So those are our covariates. And our second research question was, were there differences in experiences among these youth? So we compared experiences based on the three educational backgrounds that I just mentioned, as well as based on their background of age, gender, and ethnicity. So we used pre and post program data collected from youth in these three educational settings. And in the same data set, we also have their demographic background information. For program outcomes, we used three subscales from the relationship deciding scale, which involved relationship confidence, decision making, and recognizing signs. To see participant experiences, we used youth's responses to these two open-ended questions, asking what they found most and least useful about the course. And with the help of Dr. Scott Crapo, we conducted multi-level modeling to see the outcome differences between these groups. And to see differences in experiences, we conducted thematic analysis and chi-square tests with Dr. Joshua Turner. So let's look at what we actually found. So youth in behavioral health contexts showed more improvement in relationship confidence and also in recognizing warning signs. However, there was no difference between groups in terms of educational background in relationship decision making. So in terms of other variables, youth with better school and parental connection, as well as higher well-being, had better relationship confidence after attending the program. So those with higher GPA, better anger control, better school and parental connection and well-being, again, were better at decision making. Lastly, youth with better parental connection, higher well-being, as well as Hispanic, Latinx youth recognize warning signs better. So basically, what these results mean is we would expect youth in behavioral health contexts to be exposed to more risk compared to those in alternative high schools or just in urban high schools. And because of the resilience framework, we expect them to have a bigger improvement compared to the other groups because they are more exposed to more risks. When you give them the promotive, the protective factor of this relationship education program, they bounce higher, if that makes sense. So they have a bigger improvement. And we did find this in relationship confidence and in recognizing warning signs. When we look at experiences, what youth found most and least useful, the most significant result, which was wonderful to see, was that almost half of participants said, excuse me, they found everything useful about the program. Excuse me. They also found it useful to learn about healthy and unhealthy relationships, what they look like, as well as sex education. A lot of youth mentioned, I had no idea that you could actually get diseases by being sexually intimate. And least useful aspects were specific course components like 3, 6, 9 stages, like wait 3 months to get to a certain stage in the relationship and then wait another 3 months. So the total of 6 months to do so and so, and then another 9 months, pretty much get to know the other person. Some of those course components, some participants didn't like so much. And also your brain's chemistry when dating, etc., as well as uncomfortable or negative aspects that could be triggering to some participants. And interestingly, some people also didn't like sex education, even though it was um, found most useful by some. Some of them found it not so useful. And the main reason for that was actually the ones that didn't find it useful didn't think it was not useful in general. They just said they already knew about these things. So it is useful, but just some people said it was least useful because they already knew. When we look at differences of experiences between groups based on their educational and demographic backgrounds, we see that youth in behavioral health, females, and those who identified as other in terms of gender, and also Hispanic or Latinx youth found everything useful more so than the other groups, like people coming from other backgrounds. We have a lot of information here, so I'm going to just highlight a few. Youth in behavioral health settings also found recognizing risks and sex education more useful than others. They also felt more uncomfortable with negative aspects, which kind of makes sense. If any group has experiences in the past that were negative, you would expect it in behavioral health youth. We also see that older youth enjoyed learning about healthy relationship knowledge and skills, but found uncomfortable aspects least useful, as well as abstinence-only focus of sex education. So to summarize the most important conclusions that we can see from all these results, especially from the fact that almost half of youth found everything useful, that the curriculum and the implementation of the relationship education program of Love Notes was very successful. So kudos to our educations and educators and curriculum developers. And in terms of better relationship outcomes among youth, well-being as well as feeling more connected to school and parents was very important. Those worked as promotive or protective factors in the context of adversity. And we know from resilience framework that those who experience more potential risk and adversity in their lives can actually benefit most from being introduced to resources, such as programs like this. So we can say that Love Notes was successful in raising resilient youth. And when we look at how youth in relatively more difficult circumstances, those in behavioral health facilities, benefited more from the program, we can see it clearly. We also saw the influence of some demographic background characteristics. So lastly, it was interesting to us that sex education was found most useful and also least useful by different groups But again, it's important to point out that the useful aspects were different than the not so useful aspects that people mentioned. So, this is it from me. Thank you so much for listening to the research that we did at Utah State University. And I'm open to questions.
Yes, I will first want to say thank you. It's so interesting, the perspective of that resiliency framework. I think in some ways, like you said, a lot of people have approached with this deficits approach. So focusing on the strengths and building those strengths. I mean, it shows here the benefits and the importance of that. I want to take a minute to find my Q&A because it is hiding from me. So while folks go ahead and submit those questions, I'm a little bit curious if you could maybe go into some of the differences that you found in terms of most useful and least useful. I know it seems like there were some age kind of differences there, and it might be speculative, but what you think might be going on in that space.
So in terms of age differences, there wasn't, for example, um, more older youth actually found healthy relationship knowledge and skills useful. And I think that kind of has to do with kind of coming to an age where you realize you need to understand that you need to have skills to have a healthy relationship. And it feels like, based on the open-ended responses that students gave, which is what these experiences are about, younger youth seemed maybe like they didn't come to the understanding that they need to learn yet. So there was definitely some, oh, I already know what a good relationship looks like, or I want to date who I want to date, you know. But
Mhm.
older youth definitely had more of an understanding of like, okay, this is actually useful to learn. What does a healthy relationship look like? And older and younger youth didn't like the uncomfortable, like negative topics that could be triggering, which makes sense. I think we could say there wasn't much age variance there, um, because they may have negative experiences from their past. And abstinence only focus was more found least useful more by older youth.
Mhm.
And that could be because they kind of already have an idea about it. And youth can have the tendency to not like the abstinence only approach, because part of it, they already know if they're not sexually active, they are protected from certain risks. And that could also, we didn't look into this, but that could also have to do with specific educators' approach. Um,
Mm. Yeah,
yeah.
that's interesting
Mhm.
to consider. And I see some more questions. That was, it's not all about me, unfortunately, because that was bringing up some more thoughts and questions for me, but we can get to those later. I'm seeing in the chat box or the question box, excuse me, some folks are interested in learning more about the dosage, I guess, of content for these youth. So how much of the program they received, and any maybe, specific lessons that were used if folks want to replicate this program or
Mhm.
these findings.
So I think it's 13 lessons total, and I believe it's totals to like 14 to 16 hours.
Okay.
I think these students, high school students, take these, think after class, kind of like at their school setting. The educators come in and give them this relationship education. And I see a question, what areas are these youth in urban? Yeah, it is kind of all over Utah, but specifically focused on the Wasatch County areas where we specifically see higher rates of STIs, teen pregnancy, etc. So where there is the most need.
Mm. And then with that, I think something that comes up. I mean, the numbers are quite impressive here in terms of data collection. Are there challenges that you had in data collection, and how did the team navigate any challenges that may have come up? Because, like I said, those numbers are impressive. So maybe some insight into how those are achieved.
I am at the research side. I already have the data, which our other administrative people wonderfully collect. So educators give the kids either online or with pen and paper the surveys before and after the relationship education program. So I'm not super qualified to know about the data collection side, but if they choose not to complete the surveys, they are free to not complete them, but most of them do. They understand the importance of research. We want to understand if this program is working. So, as far as I know, there weren't many challenges in data collection. Um, and I see a question about abstinence only. Were there restrictions on what you could say in the Love Notes program or the other info in Love Notes about contraceptives and other things? Um, so the curriculum is already set, so the educators do follow a certain curriculum, so they all kind of give about the same information. And abstinence only is, of course, something they focus on and give information about that too. And of course, there are restrictions because they need to follow the curriculum they have. But the sex education part is actually quite detailed. Like they do give information about what kind of diseases they can get, not necessarily getting into the actual the sexual intimacy, but yeah, I don't think there are a ton of restrictions in terms of talking about just basic sex education, like STIs they can mention and contraceptives they talk about as well. Do you have advice on how to promote the sex education to get parents on board for students to get this education in the classrooms? That is a challenge that my supervisors did deal with, trying to get this relationship education going. That is a challenge that some of the schools were not open for it. But this is something like information that a lot of students said we didn't know anything about diseases, etc. So they need to know. And they may not be necessarily getting it from their parents or teachers in their own spheres. So it's really important for relationship education to give this to them. Uh,
Ezra, can I add to that too? Sorry, I know that there's more coming in and people are really excited and want to know more. But I
of
want to
course.
add to for anybody who might be interested in receiving kind of additional information or support in how to communicate with parents or schools and things of that nature, that we've got a really great team here at the Dibble Institute that can help with grant success and kind of coordinating that and offering their insight and experience. So if that's something that you're interested in learning more or getting some of our support from, we do have this will come later, but there will be a survey at the end of this webinar. If you want to go ahead and note that in your survey results, one of our team members can follow up with you and we can work with you to see how we can lend our support to help you in breaking through those barriers and being able to implement the curriculum. So just wanted to add that before we move to the next question. And there are some questions in the Q&A box. I know they're kind of popping up in all sorts of places. So I don't know, Ezra, if you want to answer the questions about uncomfortable aspects, because I also have some over in the Q&A that we can get to as well.
Oh, yeah, that's a good question. So the uncomfortable negative aspects were, so when educators talk about risks, they mention like sexual violence, dating violence, so that like inconsensual situations. So those are some things that some of these participants may have an experience in the past. So those are the negative aspects that they didn't like. State laws, I am not well versed in the state laws about what sex education may or may not include. I am sorry that I can't fully answer that question.
Okay, let's see. And I'll pop over because I think we've got most of those. I want to go ahead and pop into the Q&A too. Some folks are curious. So Brooke asked, did you see any influence from social media or TV shows? So I know that that maybe wasn't a focus here, but did you see any of that in your data?
No, I actually none of it, but that is an actually interesting approach. That is something that if we had questions like that in our surveys, I can see it potentially having an effect. Yeah, that's a very interesting approach that maybe in future research we could look into. Yeah.
Right. And then I know that there were kind of three different groups that you were looking at in terms of context for implementation, and there were some more improvements for some of the groups versus others. Can you talk a little bit more about the differences between the three groups in terms of their background, where they came from,
Mhm.
and just a little bit more about the populations?
Yeah, actually, in the article that we published, which Kim shared, thank you so much, we have a table that shows all their demographic information. So, to briefly, three groups, all students that participated are from urban areas. So the three groups are those like that go to a regular high school in these urban areas, and those go to an alternative education high school. So these are youth that may have difficulty with learning, uh, etc. So they need alternative education. And the last group is those who attend a behavioral health facility. So those are the students that have some mental health challenges. Um, yeah, those were the three groups that we looked at. And the behavioral health group, those that deal with mental health challenges, showed the most improvement compared to the other two groups. And I hope that clarifies. But again, our paper has much more detail.
Thank you. And yes, Kim just dropped the paper in the chat again. So for anybody who is looking for it, you can find it there. And I somehow just lost everyone's faces, but that's fine. Or at least Ezra, I lost your face, but I think you're back. I found you. Okay, so that is back in the chat where you can find more information. Um, I see a question coming in from Kim about results available for the 9 session program. I know that Scott did a presentation for us, so Dr. Scott Crapo from Utah, and we can share that webinar. There's a paper, it's not publicly available in the sense of free access, but we've got a report that he posted and did for Dibble that we can share, kind of highlighting some of the results for that 9 session program. So we'll follow up with you on that. And let's see. So another question, and again, this may be something that you can speak to, Ezra, or that may be in someone else's ballpark, but I'm going to throw it your way and see what insight you may be able to share. We've got a question about facilitating the curriculum in ways that older adults find. How do you recommend to facilitate the curriculum that older adults maybe had indicated that was less helpful? So any thoughts on how to like make that more engaging, I guess.
That's another good question. That's something that our educators would definitely have more insight on, but based on my perspective as a researcher, I think they really enjoy interaction, especially older youth. So maybe make it more interactive, like ask maybe about their experiences as much as they want to share and ask them, okay, for example, give them a scenario and say, how would you handle this situation in a more healthy way? Like give them a dialogue, like we do those trainings sometimes for our work, and they ask us, "Oh, is this response appropriate?" etc. So maybe use more example-focused approaches because a lot of the responses that we got open-ended, a lot of youth, older and younger, enjoyed examples.
Mhm.
And also like specifically real life examples from educators. So kind of turning that around and asking them, okay, what do you think? I think they would enjoy that a lot.
Yeah, I maybe that speaks to the facilitation style or challenges and limitations too, but the more you can engage them and make them active participants in it versus just kind of um, sitting and receiving the program can make a huge difference. That's why for
Hmm.
those of you who are new to the Dibble Institute and haven't experienced our curricula, we encourage you to get a digital review copy of this because it is very much conversation-based, activity-based, with a lot of engagement from the participants so that you can hear their insight and kind of use that to tailor the track and the approaches. I want to go quickly because I saw another question come up, and I'm sure you're not the only person asking this question. So somebody said, is it possible to get a copy of this slide deck to share the results? And I am pleased to report that in addition to having the presentation or the paper available, that we will also be sending a recording of our webinar today and the handout and a copy of the slide deck for anybody who registered. So if you're here, even if you're not here, but you signed up, you will be getting a copy of this recording and the presentation as well. So yes, that will be coming your way. I also saw a question that I can go ahead and give you a break again, Ezra, if you want, need a sip of water or anything like that. Questions about grants or discounts. The Dibble Institute loves and prides ourselves on being a go-to place for opportunities like different grants and funding options that may be available. So if you are not currently registered for our newsletter, we suggest that you do, or I think you probably are or will be after today's presentation, because we are sharing every month different grant opportunities that may be available specific to different areas or different focus groups or needs. So we post that there. We also have grant alerts on our website. If you go to dibbleinstitute.org, go to free resources, you will see other grant alerts for ongoing and upcoming grant opportunities that may help you in funding and supporting the great work that you all are doing in the community. So if you're not looking at those things, I encourage you to do that and get in touch with us because we'd be happy to do our best to help you in that space. Another question that came in said, how do you see findings from your research influencing relationship education in the future? So this is back to you, Ezra.
Thank you. And before I answer that question, Rachel, thank you for announcing that. I didn't know actually about the Dibble Institute or like these relationship education programs that are focused on youth. I wish I had these resources when I was a teenager, honestly. Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is wonderful that you're doing this work. Um, so the question, I think for the future research, I think we definitely need to focus more on the resilience approach and strength-based interventions instead of publishing more and more about the deficit model of focusing on problems and issues. We should focus more on, okay, how can we make things better? I mean, I know a part of resilience approach is recognizing risk factors, but the bigger part of it is, okay, how can we empower and support these youth that are exposed to these risk factors that come from challenging backgrounds. So I think future research should definitely focus more on the positive side. And also, there is a lot of research, relationship education research published that look at background, but that's mostly the stuff that's been already looked at, like age, socioeconomic status of parents, um, ethnicity, race. So we need to kind of get out of that maybe because we looked at a lot of different background dynamics, like relationship with parents, school attain, like what kind of relationships they have at school, their like specific ethnic background, or like we need to look at more detailed background dynamics to understand, well, okay, what's the influence of those? and
Mhm.
what kind of protection do those provide, or what kind of risk do those other background details pose?
Mhm. And curiosity there too, because it sounds like and it is important, like you were saying, to look at these various risk factors kind of individually and even collectively, their total impact. And I'm curious to know if you've looked at any in the sense of like intersectionality and the benefits for youth based on an intersection of these identities or risk factors.
That's a really good question. That would definitely entail a bit more complex statistical
Yeah.
analyses, but that's a great question. That's definitely something future research could do as well. So thank you for answering the question also
Down
instead.
the road, something to do.
Yeah,
And
definitely.
Okay, yeah, so just another friendly reminder, there will be a copy of the slides, so you'll get to see all of the work that we had presented here today. Additionally, we've got a question about different versions of love notes for various community needs for sex and relationship education. And the answer is yes. So if you are interested in wanting to learn more, please do reach out to share with us kind of where you're coming from in your background, because we have different options for different ages and also for different approaches that you may need to take. For example, comprehensive sex education, sexual delay, and then also abstinence. And depending on your funding stream, we've got what you need to get into your schools and make the impact with your youth that we are seeing highlighted in today's work and the other work that's been done on love notes and relationship smarts and our other curricula. So please, if you're even slightly curious, do reach out, because we are happy to offer our support and kind of finding the curriculum and the approach of that curriculum that works best for the community that you are serving. Let's see. I want to go to any other questions, because we've got a little bit more time for anybody who's interested, and I want to make sure I'm not missing anything that might have popped into the chat. A lot of people very excited, Ezra, about the results of your paper here and your presentation. So, there I'm not the only one who saw your paper and was very excited to have you share the great work that you are doing and the impact of the program.
It's awesome. I'm glad.
So let's see. I will leave it for just another minute to see if we've got any more questions before giving y'all the closing kind of review of what to expect and what's next. So I will give you all that time. But like I said, I do want to take an opportunity to thank you again, Ezra, for putting this presentation together and publishing that paper. Because like I said, when it popped up, I was very excited. And as you can see here today, a lot of other people are very excited about the great work that you are doing and have done, and just highlighting the benefits of love notes in these various groups, and the fact that it does build on those strengths and helps to build that resiliency in its approach and its working. So I want to say thank you to that. Thank you to everybody who joined us at today's webinar presentation. As I mentioned earlier, there is going to be a brief survey at the end of this webinar. If there's something that you're interested in learning more about, whether it's the different options that we have available, more about other webinars that we have, other resources that we have, or just wanting to chat with somebody from the Dibble Institute to see how we can lend our support for your great work, please let us know there. The webinar will be available in about 3 days. We will be sending it out via email, like I said, with the paper that has been dropped in the chat, as well as a copy of the slides in a PDF format. It will also be posted on our website for what you can see, or on the link that you see there. If you need a certificate for today's training, please reach out to our fantastic Kim, who, like I said, has been working behind the scenes for us. You can get with her, Kim at dibbleinstitute.org. And we are in November, which seems just absolutely wild to me. So we are closing out the year. And with that, we'd like to end this year with a gift to you. So while we will not be doing a December webinar, we did want to take a moment to highlight the top 2025 Dibble webinars. So we've got a couple of topics like sexual cyberbullying and healthy relationships, grant writing strategy. So that may be one for those of you who expressed interest in that. Exploring the importance of a trusted adult and from adversity to resilience, a framework for hope. If you scan that QR code there, it'll take you to our archived webinars where you can find more. So we wish you all a fantastic rest of your day, rest of the year, and we look forward to welcoming you all back to our webinars in 2026. Thank you, everyone, and thank you again, Ezra. We appreciate you being here.
Thank you.
I will go back to show Kim's email. I saw that question come in. It is Kim, Kim, @dibbleinstitute.org. Thank you, everybody. We'll see you next year.